Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Steve McQueen, the timeless king of cool. Few stars in Hollywood history have embodied effortless charisma, rugged independence, and pure cinematic magnetism quite like Steve McQueen. Rising from a troubled childhood to become one of the most iconic actors of the 20th century, McQueen carved a legacy defined by rebellion, authenticity, and an unmistakable sense of style that still inspires generations today. From Hardship to Hollywood. Born Terrence Stephen McQueen on March 24, 1930, in Indiana, he endured a childhood marked by instability, poverty, and long stretches spent with relatives or in reform schools. Yet those early struggles shaped the grit and determination that later fueled his meteoric rise. After serving in the Marine Corps, McQueen used the GI Bill to study acting in New York. His raw talent, piercing presence, and natural intensity quickly caught the attention of industry insiders. By the late 1950s, he transitioned from stage to screen, and Hollywood took notice. The rise of an anti-hero. McQueen became famous for playing characters who were tough, silent, rebellious, and undeniably cool. He didn't just portray anti-heroes, he defined them. His breakthrough roles include The Magnificent Seven, 1960, where his subtle scene-stealing presence hinted at his growing star power. The Great Escape, 1963, featuring the legendary motorcycle jump that cemented his daredevil persona. Bullet, 1968, home to one of the greatest car chase scenes ever filmed, showcasing McQueen's love for high-speed thrills. The Thomas Crown Affair, 1968, highlighting his suave, sophisticated side. Every frame McQueen appeared in seemed to vibrate with tension and cool confidence. He was the rare actor who could command a scene with the smallest gesture or a simple stare. A man obsessed with speed outside film sets, McQueen had a life as intense as any of his roles. He was a passionate motorsports competitor, racing motorcycles, sports cars, and anything with an engine and danger attached. His devotion to speed wasn't a hobby, it was part of his identity. This passion often spilled into his movies. Whether driving the Mustang GT in Bullet or performing many of his own stunts, McQueen blurred the line between actor and adrenaline-fueled adventurer. The king of cool. Steve McQueen's signature style, minimalist clothing, confident posture, and no-nonsense attitude, made him a fashion icon. From Purcell sunglasses to Harrington jackets, his aesthetic remains a global reference point for effortless masculinity. Behind the scenes, though, he was complex, ambitious, competitive, intensely private, and sometimes self-destructive. These contradictions only amplified the mystique that surrounded him. Final years and enduring legacy. McQueen's life was cut short when he died on November 7, 1980, at the age of 50. After battling mesothelioma, yet his influence has never faded. His films are classics. His style is timeless. His spirit, rebellious, fearless, unapologetically authentic, continues to shape pop culture, fashion, and film. Steve McQueen didn't just play cool characters. He was cool. And decades after his passing, the world still feels the heat of his legend. The making of a rebel. To understand Steve McQueen's on-screen presence, one must look at the turbulent life that shaped him. Abandoned by his father and raised by an alcoholic mother, McQueen spent much of his youth drifting between relatives, reform schools, and the streets. At the California Junior Boys Republic, a school for troubled teens, he discovered discipline and structure. Years later, after becoming a star, he quietly returned there, funding programs and visiting the boys without cameras present. It was a private act of gratitude that revealed a softer side beneath his hardened exterior. His time in the U.S. Marine Corps also molded him. What began as a series of disciplinary issues eventually transformed into achievement. He saved fellow Marines during an Arctic training exercise and earned an honorable discharge. This shift from rebel to responsible leader would echo throughout his acting career. Breaking into Hollywood after leaving the Marines, McQueen studied acting in New York under the legendary Stella Adler, who recognized a raw energy in him that could not be taught. His early work in television, especially in the Western series Wanted, Dead or Alive, launched him into the public eye. With his laconic delivery and brooding demeanor, he became a new kind of television star, dangerous, magnetic, unpredictable. Hollywood producers saw the potential. Audiences saw a man who didn't pretend to be tough, he simply was. Film stardom and the anti-hero revolution during the 1960s and early 1970s, Steve McQueen reshaped Hollywood masculinity. He was not polished like earlier leading men, nor comedic like many stars of his generation. Instead, he offered an infectious mix of vulnerability, defiance, and swagger. Key films that defined his legacy: Nevada Smith, 1966, showcased his ability to portray wounded determination. Papillon, 1973, highlighted his dramatic depth alongside Dustin Hoffman, delivering an unforgettable performance as the defiant Henri Charrier. Le Mans, 1971, was McQueen's passion project, a film so authenticity-obsessed that he insisted on real racing footage, even if it cost the studio millions. Even when he spoke few words, McQueen communicated volumes through expression alone. He mastered the art of quiet intensity. Behind the scenes, a complex personality though adored by millions, McQueen's private life was full of contradictions. The competitor he was famously competitive. On the set of The Magnificent Seven, he subtly drew attention to himself in scenes with Yul Brynner by performing small gestures, fiddling with his hat, reloading his gun, stealing audience focus without saying a word. The perfectionist, he battled with directors, demanding more realism, more danger, more authenticity. If a stunt didn't feel right, he did it himself. The soft heart despite his tough image. He had a deep affection for children and a surprising vulnerability. He adored his 2 kids and often hid his philanthropy, supporting charities, orphanages, and rehabilitation centers anonymously. The flawed man McQueen struggled with jealousy, trust issues, and a fear of losing control, traits that impacted his marriages to Neil Adams and Ally McGraw. Fame amplified those insecurities. Speed, danger, and addiction to thrill. If McQueen had not been an actor, he would have been a full-time racer. He collected cars and motorcycles like precious art and spent countless hours at tracks practicing. He once said, "Racing is life. Anything before or after is just waiting." He raced in professional competitions and nearly qualified for Le Mans. Hollywood executives often feared for his safety, but McQueen refused to compromise what made him feel alive. Decline, illness, and final fight. In the late 1970s, he stepped away from Hollywood, seeking quieter roles and a simpler life. But behind the scenes, he was fighting mesothelioma, believed to have been caused by asbestos exposure during his Marine service or on old film sets. Even as his health declined, McQueen's spirit remained defiant. His final film, The Hunter, 1980, hinted at the fading strength of a man who once outran explosions and raced against the world's best drivers. He passed away later that year at just 50. An immortal legacy. Steve McQueen's legend lives in many forms. In film, he redefined what a leading man could be: quiet, intense, masculine, flawed, magnetic. Modern stars like Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling, Daniel Craig, and Matthew McConaughey have all taken inspiration from his style and on-screen presence. In fashion, the McQueen look is eternal. Turtlenecks, Harrington jackets, slim chinos, leather boots, aviator sunglasses, motorcycles, and iconic cars. He made simplicity stylish and attitude iconic. In culture, his nickname, the King of Cool, is not a marketing invention, it is a truth universally acknowledged. Few actors, before or after him, have possessed his combination of danger, charm, and authenticity. Why Steve McQueen still matters more than 40 years after his death. McQueen continues to inspire because he represents something rare, a man who lived on his own terms. He was imperfect, but he was real. He was silent, but he spoke louder than words. He was tough, but carried hidden tenderness. Steve McQueen wasn't just a movie star, he was a cultural force. A symbol of freedom, rebellion, and timeless cool. Steve McQueen. The legend behind the myth. Extended biography. A troubled beginning that forged a fighter. Steve McQueen's childhood almost reads like the backstory of one of his characters, abandoned, hungry, angry, and constantly searching for a place to belong. Born into chaos, he never had the stability most children take for granted. His mother's alcoholism and unstable relationships meant McQueen grew up learning to rely on himself. At reform school, he found two things that would shape him forever: discipline through physical labor and strict schedules, a sense of identity through the realization that he could endure anything. These early hardships created the emotional armor that Hollywood later mistook for natural toughness. In truth, McQueen's coolness was a shield. Behind it lived a survivor. Forged in the Marines. When he enlisted in the Marines at 17, McQueen immediately clashed with authority. Yet the Marines were the first place where he earned respect through courage and competence. His defining moment came during a training exercise in the Arctic. A landing craft sank, and McQueen risked his life to save several Marines from drowning. He was rewarded with a commendation, proving that beneath the rebellious exterior lived a man guided by loyalty and bravery. Becoming an actor, and an unlikely one after leaving the service, McQueen drifted between odd jobs, mechanic, towel boy, even a lumberjack, before discovering acting. What set him apart wasn't classical technique, but a presence that demanded attention. At the actor's studio, he wasn't like the others. He didn't overanalyze emotions, he didn't rely on theatrics, he didn't crave approval, he was real. And the camera loved real. Directors said that McQueen, more than any actor of his time, could hold a scene without speaking. Viewers were drawn to the mystery behind the silence. Hollywood's reluctant superstar after gaining fame on Wanted. Dead or Alive, McQueen leapt into films with an intensity few could match. But with success came conflicts. Studio executives feared him. He hated being controlled, hated contracts, hated rules. Studios called him unpredictable. He called himself honest. Directors struggled with his perfectionism. If something looked fake, McQueen wouldn't do it. He fought to perform his own motorcycle stunts. He insisted on real racing footage in Le Mans. He demanded rewrites if dialogue felt unnatural. He wasn't difficult for the sake of ego. He simply believed audiences deserved truth. Co-stars respected him, feared him, or both. McQueen had a competitive streak that could turn friendly co-stars into rivals. Yet many admired him fiercely. He was, in their words, a man who always showed up, even if he didn't always follow the script. The women in his life. McQueen's personal relationships were as turbulent as his films were controlled. Neil Adams, the first wife, a gifted dancer and actress, Neil was McQueen's emotional anchor during his rise to fame. But McQueen's insecurity and infidelity strained their marriage. Neil later admitted, "I loved him until it hurt." Ali McGraw, Hollywood's golden couple, their chemistry on The Getaway was electric and real. McGraw left her husband, producer Robert Evans, for McQueen. Though deeply in love, their marriage suffered McQueen's jealousy and need for control. Ali once said, "Steve didn't just want to be loved, he wanted to be needed." Barbara Minty, comfort in his final days. McQueen's third wife, Barbara Minty, brought him peace during his battle with cancer. Their relationship was gentle, far removed from the chaos of his earlier years. The myth of Steve McQueen: there is the man, and then there is the myth. The man: quiet, introspective, often shy, haunted by childhood trauma, fiercely protective of his children, loyal to friends. Generous in private, constantly wrestling with self-doubt. The myth: the cool rebel, the unstoppable hero, the fearless racer, the style icon, the Hollywood king who broke every rule. The truth lies somewhere between both. On set, stories that cemented his legend: The Great Escape, motorcycle jump. The famous jump was so iconic that many assumed McQueen did it himself. In reality, he performed many of the dangerous sequences but not the jump itself. His friend and stuntman Bud Ekins executed the stunt. Still, McQueen drove 3 different motorcycles in the chase, disguised as German soldiers. Bullet's car chase: McQueen personally choreographed much of the sequence. He pushed the Ford Mustang to its limits, insisting on practical stunts because the audience can tell when it's fake. Papillon: he lost weight dramatically for the prison scenes and performed intense physical sequences to honor the real Henri Charrier's story. Dustin Hoffman later said, "McQueen was the most committed actor I ever worked with." The shadow of cancer: by the late 1970s, McQueen's health was rapidly declining. His mesothelioma diagnosis shocked Hollywood. Yet he refused self-pity, opting instead for alternative treatments in Mexico. He remained defiant, quietly marrying Barbara Minty and fighting until his final moments. He passed on November 7, 1980, leaving a world stunned and a legacy untouched by time. Why Steve McQueen will always be iconic even now. McQueen stands as a symbol of something rare: authenticity in a world of pretense, simplicity in an age of noise, rebellion that still feels modern, style that never fades. A man who lived fast but loved deeply. His films are studied, his fashion is copied, his attitude is imitated, but never duplicated. Because Steve McQueen wasn't crafted by Hollywood. He carved himself from the scars of his own life.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.